Hello and welcome to another HanDrinksSolo Wine info video. Now this channel is dedicated to all the best sorts of wine science, wine history, cellar mastery, petty arguments, as well as all the odd ducks and rare gems that come out of the South African winelands. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, now is as good a time as any. But the wine that we're exploring today is the Wildeberg Coterie Semillon Sauvignon Blanc Blend 2020 vintage. So in the video today, I'm going to be discussing first a little bit about why Wildeberg are so incredibly exciting and worth watching. Secondly, I'm going to go through some of the sensory mechanics of a Semillon Sauvignon blend. And third, we're going to talk about what this wine tastes like in the glass using our understanding of the blend we just discussed. But before I even begin to get into the technical side of things, I implore you, nay, I beseech you, to try and be patient with this wine and drink it over 2 days, as you will see how much it continues to unfurl and open up as time passes. But back to Wildeberg. Now, Wildeberg was a brand, really, before it was a farm. It was owned by the UK-based company Boutinot Wines, which owns wine brands in pretty much every single one of the top 10 biggest wine-producing countries in the world. In South Africa, Paul Boutinot, the founder of Boutinot Wines, bought a farm in Franschhoek and declared that to be the home of Wildeberg, an extension of Boutinot's international operations. Winemaker J.D. Rousseau was appointed as the cellar master for Wildeberg, and his job was not only to tend the vines on the Wildeberg property, but also to make wines from fruits sourced around the country. And this seems to be a part of the job that he really relishes, that of going out, exploring, and discovering incredible sites that will produce the level of wine that can match the Wildeberg style. Now at this point, you can be forgiven for thinking that this sounds suspiciously like a co-op setup, in the sense that there's a big UK brand who have bought a property here but really source a lot of fruit from farmers in the surrounding area and then all make it together in one cellar. This misconception is worsened by the fact that winemaker J.D. Rousseau's background is with companies like Boerland Cellar and DGB, which are in many senses essentially wine factories. But if you pause for a second and look a little closer at what Wildeberg is doing, you will see very quickly that this is an intensely quality-focused outfit that couldn't be further from a wine factory. Here are just a couple of points that highlight this for me. Your first clue is their cultivar choices. In their range, they have some truly bizarre wines. There's a Cabernet Franc Malbec blend, which we've actually had before in the club. Then there's a Grenache Chenin blend. There's a Petit Syrah, or a Durif as it gets called in Australia. And as we're tasting today, there's a spontaneously fermented Semillon Sauvignon blend. And as we know from previous videos, spontaneous fermentation is often high risk, but it does result in a far more interesting end product. If this wasn't enough, I can also add to the list that, as with the wine today, they often deal with certified heritage vineyards. The Semillon grapes that go into this wine were from vines that were planted in 1905, making them more than 100 years old. These are incredibly difficult to farm and often give you lower yields. Nothing about what they do screams low risk or easy sell, which for me is the hallmark of what bigger wine factories are often looking to achieve. I mean, if you think about it, Wildeberg are pretty much the perfect HanDrinksSolo producer, living at that nexus of quirky, offbeat, and with an intense focus on quality. But zooming in a little from Wildeberg as an operation, I want to focus on their slightly unusual Semillon Sauvignon blend. Now, I don't say it's unusual because they blend Semillon and Sauvignon. In fact, this is one of the most established white blends from the old world. The white Bordeaux blend, which comes from famous appellations like Pessac, Léognan, and Grave, is made up of exactly these two cultivars. So when I say it's an unusual wine, I'm referring more to the manner in which these cultivars are blended rather than the blend itself. In Bordeaux, Semillon forms the backbone of these blends. It's rich and textured and mouth-filling. And then, of course, Sauvignon Blanc is added to give this sort of aromatic boost, as well as perhaps a tiny touch of extra acidity. But in South Africa, with our much warmer climate, we end up with way less natural acidity, precisely because of this warmer climate. And when we're producing blends, we need to make sure that we have every little bit of natural acidity that we can get. Which is why, when we blend Sauvignon and Semillon in South Africa, we lean heavily into Sauvignon Blanc, giving loads of aromatic boost and plenty of natural acidity. And then on the back end, almost as an afterthought, we toss in some Semillon to fill it up with some rich, waxy, slick mouthfeel. On its worst day, South African Semillon is kind of heavy, flabby, and grassy all at once. And sure, it can add structure to a blend, but it adds structure in the same way that John Goodman added structure to that toll booth in Coyote Ugly. So in that sense, if we blended white blends the way Bordeaux does, with loads of Semillon and only a touch of Sauvignon, we end up with flabby blends that don't have enough acidity nor enough aromatic intrigue, unless we pick some very special sites from which to source Semillon for the blend, which is exactly what happened with the Coterie. As I mentioned earlier, the Semillon components in this wine come from vines that are over 100 years old. These old vines have a way of preserving natural acidity a lot more effectively as they ripen. And the end result is a wine that is beautifully balanced, despite being 80% Semillon. But enough theory, let's drink. On the nose, there's this amazing combination of herbs and fruit and stones and flowers, and then a gentle little touch of oak to round it all out. So up front, we have these amazing herbal rooibos tea aromas, which segue into a kind of savory, flint, dusty gravel road thing going on. And that, in turn, gives way to riper, fuller elements of peach and even this amazing homemade lemonade note. And when we take a sip, we can definitely put to rest any worries that we may have had about there not being enough natural acidity. And the beauty of this is that once you've adjusted to this laser-like core of natural acidity, you will then begin to notice a much softer, rounder, slick, silky mouthfeel, contributed by the high concentration of the old vine Semillon. There's this almost pulpy citrus and peach pip element going on that is absolutely incredible. Now, lucky for me, I opened this wine yesterday and I'm drinking it today, which is why I'm getting this superbly generous, unfurling fruit element. If you've just opened it and are finding it a little bit tight and perhaps that acidity feels like it's tearing the enamel off your teeth, you need to take my advice and drink more of this tomorrow. Finally, what's worth noting is something I've already mentioned, that element of concentration. When you sip this wine, don't be in a hurry to swallow it. Just let it sit on your palate a little bit, and you'll notice there's kind of a heaviness, a texture, a mouth-coating element to it. Now, you might say, what on earth is concentration in a wine? I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, if you remember when you were a child and tried to sneak that extra squeeze of Liquor mixer drink into your glass when mom wasn't looking, that was really you just seeking higher concentration in your mixer drink. And so it is with some of the higher quality wines. Higher quality wines will often have higher readings of what is called dry extract, which essentially means what's left in the glass once all the alcohol and liquid has been driven off. Or put another way, more flavor and aromas in each sip that you take. It's almost as if you're getting more fruit per sip than you would on, say, a poolside quaffing Sauvignon Blanc. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Wildeberg Coterie Sauvignon Semillon blend. Drop your comments into the comment section on the HanDrinksSolo website. And if you have any questions about Sauvignon or Semillon or Wildeberg, drop them there too, and I will try to get back to you.